These are the frequently asked questions for Algebra 2 for Section 13, 3-Day 1. Starting with write each measure in radians, express your answer in terms of pi, and as a decimal rounded to the nearest hundredth. So for number 6, we have negative 300 degrees. And remember, you can think of that as a fraction with a 1 on the bottom. And then because we want degrees to cancel out, degrees have to go on the bottom. And you could either use 360 equals 2 pi radians, or you could equal 1 pi is 180. And this book focuses on pi being 180 degrees. And then you can go ahead and do some canceling. Pretty obviously, we can divide both of those by 10 to start with. And then you think about the biggest number that would go into both 18 and 30, and that's going to be 6. So we would have a 3 down here on the bottom and a 5 up on the top. So everything that's left here is a negative 5 pi over 3, and that is in radians. And then, like it says, they do want that also to the nearest hundredth. So you grab your calculator and punch in negative 5 times pi, divide your answer by 3, and we're talking about negative 5.235, so negative 5.24 radians for number 6. And because we are working with two different units here, it is really important that you are labeling your answers on these so that we know whether or not we're working in radians or not as we go through these. All right, probably don't need a lot of those, so let's go to this. This one is write each measure in degrees, so going backwards from what we were just doing. Round your answer to the nearest degree if necessary. So 13 has 11 pi over 10, and this of course is in radians. So using unit analysis, we know that we're going to have radians on the bottom in order for things to cancel out, and obviously it has to have a pi in it so that the pi will cancel out. So we'll go with 180 degrees over pi radians. So the pi's are gone, and then we can do a little reducing with the 10 here and the 180. So we need 11 times 18, which is 198. Remember, the radians are going to cancel out. This would be the one label we would have left, which would be degrees there. So rounding your answer to the nearest degree, we didn't have to do any rounding on that one. That's going to be 198 degrees. Then for number 37 through 40, determine the quadrant or axis where the terminal side of an angle lies. You have to remember that because this was European, it goes counterclockwise. So those are going to be the quadrants going counterclockwise. And for 39, they're saying a negative pi radians. So we have, as always, our initial side on the positive x-axis. And what we need to do is swing that a negative pi radians, which would be clockwise 1 pi. And that would go right here. And so it said determine the quadrant or axis. Well, this is definitely the x-axis that we are looking at. And if you want it to be more specific, we could say the negative x-axis, because that is the left portion of this, so the negative x-axis over there. Then number 40 has 6 pi over 5 radians. Now you certainly could convert that to degrees if that bothers you, but when I'm looking at this, I'm thinking, okay, so really 6/5, that would be 1 1/5 pi radians. And we know that 1 radian takes us to the opposite side here. That's what we just saw in the last example, in fact, was that it takes us to that negative x-axis. So if we have 1 1/5 pi, we're going to go counterclockwise 1 pi, but then we need to go 1/5 more, and that will land us in the third quadrant. So right now, some of you may need to still turn this into degrees in order to think about it. But the place that you want to get to is where you are thinking not just in degrees about our Cartesian coordinate plane, but also thinking in terms of pi and using radians instead. Then I'm going to stop so I can record. Oh, no, I do have another one here. I'm going to be recording day 2 as well, but I will make a stop before I go on to that one. So 61 says sketch each angle in standard position. That's kind of what I was just doing with the last group of problems that I was going through with you with the quadrants. So Remember, the initial side of all of our angles is going to be on the positive x-axis. So negative 270 means we'd have to go 90, 180, and 270 clockwise in order for that to happen. I'm going to go ahead and label that 270 degrees there. Actually, let me put negative 270 so nobody gets confused. Really, we're just going 270 degrees in the clockwise direction, but with the negative there, that will be very clear.